how can you tell if you've had a spiritual experience or it's just in your head? If it's only in your head, it wasn't a spiritual experience. Because spiritual experiences take us beyond the mind. The mind functions only in separation. It can think about things, analyze things, judge things, remember things. But it's got to hold everything at an arm's length. Spirituality is oneness. Spirituality is a dissolving of borders and boundaries. Spirituality is an experience. And so, if what you've had is something that has been a thought in your head, it may have been a great thought, which is wonderful, because as I say all the time, our thoughts are vehicles that take us to our destination. Based on what I think, I end up. So if I'm thinking rooted in ego or rooted in judgment or rooted in negativity or rooted in jealousy or anger or unfulfilled expectations, I'm going to end up at the destination of misery. Whereas if I'm thinking thoughts of gratitude, of love, of oneness, of completeness, I'm going to end up in joy, in bliss, in peace. So our thoughts take us as vehicles to a destination. But they're still just thoughts. It's not an actual experience. It's not an actual truth in my being. A spiritual experience, a deep spiritual experience, is something you feel. You feel it in the heart. You feel it in the very, very experience of the self. So, and of course there's no equation or box of what counts as a spiritual experience. So how do you know if you've had one? Well, if for a period of time, even if just for a brief moment, you were connected to spirit. You were connected to soul. You were connected to essence, to consciousness. That was a spiritual experience. When you connect just one object to another object, that's an experience of the mind. The mind says, I'm an object. I'm made of matter. I am this thing to be thought about. Spirituality says, I'm spirit. Consciousness. Energy. And to feel that, to really know that, is a spiritual experience. So, rather than trying so much to name things, it's more important to try to have them. We can name spirituality, we can name enlightenment, we can name, there's so many different questions that come up about different characteristics. We can name them. But more importantly than being able to name something or define it or even pinpoint it, is this enlightenment or is that enlightenment? More important than that is to actually experience it. Because when you experience it, it doesn't matter what it's called. And you no longer need to define it. And it no longer becomes about explaining or proving or showing or defining. It becomes just about experiencing. So all of the practices that we do, our meditation, our yoga, our prayers, satsang, arti, all of that, spiritual reading, reading of the scriptures, all of that are the tools, the vessel, the vehicles to get to having a spiritual experience. They're all just different ways into the river. None of them is the experience itself, but each of them is a way to get into that river. Even, I was speaking earlier today about service. A lot of people make this mistake of thinking, oh, service is just something you're supposed to do because it's good to help people, and if you are a spiritual person or a good person, you should want to help people. So we think about it more like that, as kind of a value or an ethics. But on a deep spiritual level, our service is our spiritual practice. It's not something we do because, well, I'm identified as a spiritual person, therefore I should do nice things, therefore I am serving. The service is the way in to the experience of oneness. The service is the way of purifying the mind, the ego, the ignorance that keeps us separate, that keeps us living in ignorance. Otherwise, the ego is amazing. Really just, it's extraordinary how it entangles us with its stories. But service, if you really are serving as a spiritual practice, it actually gives you the way to be free of those games. Because if I really aim to see myself in those I'm serving, if I really serve as just a tool in the hands of God, and so it doesn't matter if I'm cleaning someone's toilet, something I may think is really beneath me. This is why so traditionally the ashrams and the spiritual institutions would have people come and clean the toilets. It wasn't that they couldn't, find people to clean toilets. It was that literally as a spiritual experience, there are few things more humbling than cleaning someone else's poop. And in order to break that ego very, very quickly, to break that sense of, I think I am something or someone or separate from or better than, worthy of, they would give people that. Sweeping the floors, cleaning the toilets, washing dishes, very menial work. Because that service is the tool. And so now we have, here we have a different philosophy, which is to actually get people engaged more in the different service projects and programs. But the point being that regardless of what you're doing, that's what the aspect of seva is. So all of our spiritual practice, on the mat with my eyes closed, off the mat with my eyes open, hands in soapy water, hands in a toilet, hands at a computer screen, hands chanting japa on my mala, whatever I may be doing, that spiritual practice is a vehicle to get me into that experience of oneness. And so as you do that and as you have that experience, don't worry about what it's called. Because the minute the mind gets in there and starts trying to name it or analyze it or judge it or say, oh, I wonder if this is a spiritual experience. Am I having it now? Is this it? The moment that happens, I'm separate from it. The moment that happens, I have just pulled myself out of it. So don't worry what it's called. But just let it happen. Do whatever you can. Fill your day with as many different vehicles into that river as you can. It'll take you out of the mind, into the heart, into the spirit, into the self.